Welcome to the Remarkable Riparian Digital Short Course, an online education series covering the basics of riparian understanding. This self-paced learning program is produced by the Nueces River Authority in Texas, but the concepts presented here are pretty much universal to all natural waterways. Observation has taught us that dysfunctional or unhealthy riparian areas will recover when certain activities are halted or changed. In Lesson 7, we'll see how to identify the hindrances to riparian function and recovery. But first, let's make sure we have a common understanding of what riparian means. This is a term that has really only come into common usage in Texas in the past 10 to 15 years, even among land management professionals. A riparian area or zone is the part of the landscape that flanks rivers and streams, shown in blue on this picture. This includes the stream bank, floodplain, plants, soils, and rocks that make up the ribbon of land that flanks the waterway. Areas adjoining lakes and reservoirs are also considered riparian, but this short course will focus mainly on rivers and streams. From this photo point on the Nueces River, we can see how the riparian area can recover when a hindrance is removed. In this case, off-road vehicle recreation was keeping riparian vegetation from growing. A new state law was passed in 2005 that prohibits vehicles in the riverbed, and once that activity was halted, the riparian vegetation began to take hold and grow. The new plants trapped sediments from floodwaters, and those sediments, rich in organic matter, began to store water. Within a few short years, function was recovered, and a healthy riparian area evolved. Livestock and wildlife, like people, prefer to spend time near a creek or river. Left uncontrolled, livestock will disproportionately favor the riparian area over upland sections of a pasture. When managers realized that continuous sheep grazing was hindering the riparian function on Burro Creek, the grazing program was changed. Nothing else was done to the creek. No trees were planted, no bulldozers were used, no money was spent. Over time, the creek fixed itself. How did that happen? How do creeks heal themselves? Thanks to Wayne Elmore, a nationally acclaimed riparian researcher and leader, we have a photographic record over a period of time that shows the recovery of Bear Creek, located in the dry part of Oregon. This creek pasture had been grazed year-round for many decades. Then, in the 1950s, willow trees on the creek banks were taken out with herbicide to reduce their water use. In 1964, the devegetated creek endured a 100-year flood event, and the stream channel was cut down to bedrock. The creek remained in this dysfunctional condition until the grazing program was changed in the late 1990s. Wayne began his photo record in May of 1977, and at that time he noted some ready-to-recover indicators. He noted the presence of riparian stabilizers. He observed that the steep-cut bank had developed a softer angle of repose. He saw vegetation marching toward the center of the channel, making the active channel appear narrower. Cattle grazing on Bear Creek was curtailed for 2 years to jumpstart the recovery process, but in 1979, seasonal grazing was reintroduced. 9 years later, an active and functional floodplain had developed on both sides of the creek, and obligate riparian wetland vegetation dominated the site. In June of 1987, a large rain brought floodwaters to cover that well-vegetated riparian floodplain. Wayne was able to get this image after the water receded. He noted the large deposition of sediments, several inches thick, trapped and held by the riparian plants. Flooding brings rich organic matter containing water-storing sediments. When a riparian area is well vegetated, these materials will be incorporated into the riparian floodplain, where they are very beneficial. Without the sediment trapping vegetation, the rich soils can end up downstream, taking up valuable space in a water supply reservoir. When Wayne returned to Bear Creek a few months after the flood event, he found riparian grasses, sedges, and rushes that had been buried in mud were now growing. The new sediments were being stabilized, and the channel was noticeably narrower and deeper. By the next fall, Wayne found the flood sediments fully incorporated into the floodplain that had begun to store water and appeared to be higher in elevation. The banks were squishy to walk on, and the riparian grasses had become bushy and coarse. In 1993, the whole area was suffering from drought, and Wayne went back to take a photo of Bear Creek. While there was no surface water in the creek, when he looked under the tall, drying vegetation, the channel was still damp. The trapped organic matter from previous floods was storing and holding water longer than the soils outside of the floodplain. During drought, the roots of riparian plants grow deeper and deeper, chasing the receding water table. These deeply impregnated roots create very stable bank, able to withstand the high energy of floodwaters when rain returns. In 1996, Wayne returned to find a beaver dam on the creek that had widened the channel and spread water into the floodplain. He took this photo 100 feet upstream to show the effects of the new water storage. Beaver dams can be important hydrologic modifiers. Even though these beavers were not very diligent at maintaining the structure, Wayne noted that it provided the extra water to boost the growth of riparian vegetation. Bear Creek is once again a perennial stream that flows year-round, hosting a healthy fish population and providing excellent winter forage for cattle. 25 years of recovery on Bear Creek proves that creeks really do want to fix themselves. If we can identify the hindrance and change it, nothing else may be required. Across the landscape, you can see many creeks that are ready to recover, and imagine how they can become functional if the hindrance can be identified and removed. It is important to keep the image of a healthy, functioning creek clear in our minds, so that hindrances can be identified. Creeks in different parts of the country can look very different, but they all work the same way. Every creek needs enough energy dissipation or vegetation to slow down floodwaters and capture the good stuff so recovery can continue. Become familiar with the most common hindrances to a creek's function and recovery: farming too close to the bank, mowing, spraying close to the creek, manicured landscapes next to the creek, grazing concentrations in the creek area, excessive deer, exotic, or hogs in the creek area, burning in the riparian area, the removal of large dead wood, artificial manipulation of banks or sediment, excessive vehicle traffic in the creek area, poorly designed road crossings or bridges, excessive recreational foot traffic in the creek area, excessive alluvial pumping or other withdrawals, excessive invasive plant populations that overtake riparian vegetation. Any of these can hinder riparian function and be a barrier to recovery, and every one can be altered or stopped so the stream can begin to heal itself.